Where did sin begin? People know the story of Adam and Eve, the serpent, the forbidden fruit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the fall of humanity into sin. But here's the surprising part: sin did not begin in the Garden of Eden. Before Eve ever reached for the fruit, before Adam disobeyed God's command, before the serpent came to the tree, sin had already appeared somewhere else. And even more surprisingly, sin appeared in a place we least expected: heaven. So, how could sin begin in a perfect place created by a perfect God? To answer that question, we gotta go back to the beginning. The Bible introduces us to a powerful angelic being who became known as Satan. Ezekiel describes him this way: "You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God." Notice that Satan was not created as an evil angel or an evil being. He was an anointed cherub. That's an exalted position in heaven. But listen to the next verse. "You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you." Think about those words. Till iniquity was found in you. God created Lucifer perfect. God did not put evil inside him. God did not create a devil. So, where did sin come from? The Bible points us to something happening inside Lucifer himself. Verse 17 says, "Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor." And there it is. His heart was lifted up. Lucifer began looking at his beauty, his position. He began looking at his glory. Instead of giving God all the glory, Lucifer began looking at himself. And Isaiah gives us something deeper. Isaiah helps us to look into the heart of Lucifer when he was beginning to look to himself and glorify himself and exalt himself. Isaiah reads, "For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God." Isaiah 14, verse 13. Then verse 14 says, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." Did you notice the repeated words? I will ascend. I will exalt my throne. I will be like the Most High. Lucifer's attention shifted from God to himself. And that helps us understand about the origin of sin. Sin begins in the heart before it becomes open rebellion. Lucifer first entertained pride and self exaltation in his heart. And then those desires eventually develop into rebellion against God's government. 1 John chapter 3 verse 4 tells us, "Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness." Sin is choosing our own way instead of God's way. And that's exactly what Lucifer did. Lucifer was basically saying, I don't want God's position for me. I don't want God to position me. I want to determine my position. I want to do it my way, not God's way. And eventually, what took place, what was beginning in the heart of Lucifer, what began in the heart of Lucifer, spread to others. Revelation chapter 12 verse 7 describes a war in heaven. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. Then verse 9 identifies the dragon. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. The rebellion that began in Lucifer's heart eventually became an open conflict in heaven. And then Satan brought that rebellion to this earth. In Genesis 3, he approached Eve through the serpent and challenged God's word. God had given Adam and Eve a clear command, but Satan tempted them to distrust God and choose another way. And they did. And that's when sin entered the human experience. Romans chapter 5 verse 12 says, "Therefore, just as through one man, sin entered the world, and death through sin." Notice the distinction. Sin began with Lucifer, but sin came to this world through Adam's fall. It came to earth through Adam's fall. It entered the human world through Adam's fall, Adam's sin. And there's a lesson here that goes far beyond the history of Lucifer, because the same fundamental question still confronts every one of us. Whose way will I choose? God's way or my way? Lucifer's fall didn't begin with an outward act that everyone can see. It began in his heart. Pride, self-exaltation, the desire to choose his own way over God's way. And eventually, what was inside became visible on the outside. Jesus taught the same principle about human sin. Matthew chapter 15 verse 19, Jesus said, "For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies." Sin does not simply begin with our hands. It starts within us in the heart and ends in our actions. So where did sin begin? Sin began in heaven, in the heart of Lucifer, when a perfect created being chose self-exaltation and rebellion against his creator. God created him perfect, but God also gave him freedom. And Lucifer used that freedom to choose a path contrary to God. That choice transformed Lucifer into Satan, an adversary of God. And the rebellion that began in one angel's heart eventually reached our world. But thankfully, that's not where the story ends. The same Bible that tells us where sin began also tells us that sin will not exist forever. Through Jesus Christ, God has provided a way to forgive sin, transform the human heart, and ultimately bring rebellion to an end.